I want to start our time today with a question that I hope will be a great one for discussion with you and the people that you're around. Are you ready? Okay. How do you feel when you hear the word change? How do you feel when you hear the word change? Now, I don't pretend to know how you exactly feel, but as I've seen how change can affect people in my life and in the lives of people that I know, I feel like people are kind of in one of two areas. Number one, you love change. You embrace change. You sprint towards change because you know that on the other side of change is a great new beginning for you. Or maybe you just like adventure. Okay, you love adventure, you love the unknown, and staying the same is boring. And so you run towards change. And then there are those of us, and I kind of find myself a little bit here, right? Where the very mentioning of the word change causes anxiety to well up in your chest. Change freaks you out. You love normal. You wish life could go back to normal, whatever normal was. You miss what was. You lament what was, and any sort of change or mentioning of what could be in the future drives you up the wall. And so you probably really had a hard time these last few months because so much has changed in our world. I mean, think about it. It's changed the world that we live in, right? There's a virus that's going on. We've had racial injustice, and that's been awful. Okay. Restaurants are closing back down again in some areas of the country. Things seem like normal will never, ever, ever be tangible again. So, I mean, what do we do? Well, guys, I want to think about this idea of change and how, look, we may have a positive or negative association with it, but, if you really look at what change looks like in here, like the story of God, there's actually some really good parts about change. And if you remember anything else today, I hope it's this, that every new beginning is on the other side of change. Every new beginning is on the other side of change. And really, Jesus, I think, embodies change really well. He was kind of just a normal guy like us, or at least he looked that way. But I mean, you know the story if you're familiar with Jesus, and if you don't, then here are the Cliff Notes version, right? A guy was born into this world just like us, but he was not like us. He started teaching, and he started leading, and he amassed a following. And it kind of turned the social system up on its head. The people that everybody traditionally honored, well, instead he'd honor a kid or somebody who was paralyzed or a beggar or somebody that was poor. He represented kind of a new kind of leader. And so he got this group of guys that just unleashed compassion and preached this new message of hope to the world. And it was as if God had become close. It wasn't go to the temple anymore. It was just simply go to Jesus, and there you will find the Son of God, which is why his friends and followers were so surprised when this guy that they thought was supposed to establish this great nation of Israel was overthrown. And he was condemned to death. He died a criminal's death, was murdered on a cross, and they didn't know what to do. And then, of course, 3 days later, something changed again. He did the impossible, and he resurrected from the dead. In the book called Acts, which we're going to spend our time in the next few weeks, it's really the story of the church, like the idea that you're sitting in a circle with some people right now. Well, it's because the book of Acts was written 2,000 years ago, and it kind of gives us our playbook. But after Jesus is resurrected from the dead, they're sitting around and they're trying to figure out what to do. I mean, they were in a house just like you're in right now. And they were thinking, Jesus, hey, is this the time now? Okay, look, we didn't think you were going to die, and then you died, which really surprised us, but now you resurrected. So is this when you show those Romans that you're really on top? They asked him a question, so when will you restore the kingdom to Israel? And his response would surprise them It surprised me, and I believe it's one of the more important statements in the entire Bible. They ask him, when will you restore our nation? When will you bring normal again? And he says, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons that the Father has fixed by his own authority. When will life be normal again? He says, hey, it's not for you to know the times and the seasons. And then he says this, and it's so important. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. They ask a question of when, something specific. And instead of answering, here's the timeline. He says, look, you don't need to worry about that. What you do need to think about is how my presence in your life changes your future. He did a brand new thing called the Holy Spirit, which changed the idea. Which changed the idea that God was somewhere in a building. It was something that you go to, and instead it set it back upon its head. It changed the dynamic. It became a new beginning where instead of going somewhere to experience God, you were able to experience him here. You didn't need a building. The building didn't matter. God could come to you, and he could live within you through the Holy Spirit. And I know there's probably a variety of opinions on what that looks like. And honestly, we don't even really need to get into that today. But the question that I want to ask you is this. Do you believe that God can bring new beginnings? And can they be a good thing for you? I know these last few months have been really difficult. I know you're sitting in a house right now when you thought you'd probably sit in a church building when you came to HSM again. But I want you to know that just like how Jesus' followers were a little bit confused at what he was going to do and what he meant for this world, I am believing that God can do a great new thing today. And he can do it through you, and he can do it through me. Because every new beginning starts with a change. Okay, so take some time now and spend with your small group. Maybe answer that question. Talk about what it looks like to have new beginnings, and enjoy your house group.